Great. 801. Hello, everyone. My name is Leanne, and I'm the Executive Assistant of SCA. I think we're going to take a little bit, to make sure everyone's ready. Christina, are you still there?
I am here.
Awesome. Colleen?
I'm here.
Great. So we'll start off with a little message from Giannis before we start this presentation. Giannis?
Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. So today we'll be focusing on explaining the process for the Board of Director elections that take place every year. And it's something that is really important for the association and getting the association to the future. So before I pass this to Christina and Colleen, I want to address an important matter that has come to our attention during this election cycle, just to put things clear before we start this webinar. As you may know, one of our current board directors recently released a public statement, including some allegations regarding bullying and misogyny within the board. Upon reading this public statement, I immediately reached out to the board director who released the statement and have started a full investigation of this matter with her involvement, and it's a third-party investigation. It is very important for us to respect the confidentiality of this investigation and the privacy of the board member who has come forward to report this behavior. So in today's webinar, we're going to focus on explaining the step and how the election process functions and how anyone can get on the board of SCA. And we're going to take in questions on this one. So I want to thank you all for joining us and being here with us. So I'll pass it over to Colleen to start. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Giannis. So I'll be emceeing a little bit before we pass it on to Colleen and Christina. So I'd like to welcome you all to the SCA Board election process. And before we start, we would like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to SCA News after we are finished. And if you have any questions, please submit the questions into the questions panel in your GoToWebinar control panel. And I'd like to introduce the panelists, Christina. She is currently the president of the board of directors. Colleen, who is currently the vice president of the board of directors, and Giannis, who is the executive director of SCA. And I'll pass it on to Christina or Colleen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leanne, and thank you very much, Giannis. Welcome everybody to our webinar. What we'll be covering today is comes out from a lot of questions that we've actually had in the past now about the election process. So we're very excited. As you know, every year we do this election process, and we're very excited to also today, this year, have a very good board of directors and also get a new directors. But what we've heard the past few weeks from the questions that have come up, that we'd like to clarify and take your questions also later today on how this election process works, how the process and timeline is. We'd like you to meet the slate of candidates, how you can use the elections website, and also give clarity on the petitions process. And then we'll take any questions that you type in. Vicente will pass them on so we can answer any questions that you have. First, we'd like to start with giving an overview of the SCA Board of Directors. So how does it actually look like, and how does it work? So how it works is that every board of directors on the SCA, we have a president, we have a vice president, we have a second vice president, we have a treasurer, and then we have the CEO, who's actually the operational head of the entire staff and the entire organization, association. How it works is that if you're a vice president, you then automatically become president, and that's the same with the second vice president. You move up to vice president and then president. Why do we do it like this? Well, it gives people time, and I speak from experience here, it gives people time to actually get experience on the board, understand how the association works, how the volunteers work, get to know the industry and community more and more, and then actually finish off with being president. The second vice president, president are all a one-year term. The treasurer is on for 2-year term. that also is embedded in our bylaws, just because you give it sort of a financial constant support also to the CFO, who also works under the CEO. And then we have a board of directors. And as you can see here in gray, directors, directors, directors. 3 of them are sort of special directors, because one of them is the head of the Barista Guild, one of them is head of the Coffee Roasters Guild, and one of them is a representative of the Coffee Technicians Guild, which has just been established. And we're very proud of having also these guilds as part of, incoming know-how, being a cooperation between the guilds. They're very important to us. And so, as you can see, the other steps, the spots are filled by directors. And we really have tried also, together with Colleen knows, and also Juan Luis, who's the second vice president, know that we really in the past years always tried to get new people in, and very diverse people in. That was one of the sort of clear directives also in the past, to really make sure that we represent our communities, and we also represent future communities in these spots as directors. So this was really a try from coming away from the sort of European American viewpoint to representing the global association that we are today. If you click on exactly, you can see the guild directors and then guests, just because that is a new guild that has come in, and we see them as guests, which means they don't have voting rights, but the green spots directors obviously have voting rights. Okay. So where do all these, well, how does this setup come from? Well, it's embedded in our bylaws. The SCA has bylaws that were created after the merger between the SCAE and the SCAA. That's why all the things that we've laid out here today and that we're trying to explain are just embedded in our bylaws, which, as you can see at the bottom, you can read through them on our website, sca.coffee/bylaws. So they're very open, they're very transparent. That's what they are, and that's what our association is driven by. So in the bylaws, it says something that I've already said now, that go back one slide, please. That the president, the vice president, and the second vice president is a 1-year term. Please go back one slide. The treasurer is a 2-year term. Exactly. The treasurer, as you can see here, serves a 2-year term. And then the guild directors serve a 1-year term, because they actually get voted on in the guild and then are automatic directors. And all directors may serve a maximum of 2 terms. So once you've been in for 2 terms, you can't actually serve on. That's a very American approach, because also these constant terms, but that's just set down in our bylaws. This is not something that the board of directors have come up. This is in the bylaws. And as I said at the bottom, if you want to read them, please do. You can just go to our website. They're available there. Okay. We kick to the next one. You can see the current, so I can start talking exactly. Current president is myself. I come to an end, so my term ends on the 31st of December of this year. Mrs. Vice President Colleen Anunu, who's also in this webinar today, becomes president, so she'll be president for the term of 2021. The current second vice president, Juan Luis Barrios, becomes vice president, and then today, this year was voted Konstantinos Konstantinopoulos from Greece becomes second vice president. So he was voted onto that position this year. Niels Eriksson, who has served the association for a great number of years, I think about 11 years, his term as a treasurer comes to an end. And we had a vote earlier this year, Burak Alici, to become treasurer of this association for the next 2 years. Which means that this year we have 8 directors whose term come to an end on the 31st of December. And so that means we have 8 spots to fill. We have 8 spots to fill. And the way it works also in the bylaws is that we say we have the nominating committee, which I come to in a minute, but the nominating committee selects a slate. And this year, since we have 8 spots to fill, the nominating committee selects 8 that they propose as a slate. As you can see further on in Colleen's presentation, this year we were more transparent and more open than we ever have before, and we actually presented a bigger pool of candidates to the board to actually have that discussion on, inclusivity, diversity, who would really fit into the board. But Colleen will take over then in a minute. And so also the way it works is the second vice president is elected by the board every year. So that's what we did this year. We said Konstantinos was voted in and he becomes second vice president. So the board, the whole board, selects who they would like to have as second vice president, who then turns into becoming vice president and turns into becoming president. And the treasurer likewise is only selected every 2 years, but also is selected by the board to become treasurer of the association. So how do you get elected to the board? Is this already you, Colleen, or do I drive on?
I think this is where we flip.
Okay, so I would like to pass on to Colleen, who will now explain a little bit how the nominating committee works, how the slate works, how the petition process works, how the write-in on ballot works, and how the entire process works. I will obviously be here, and then Colleen and I can take questions afterwards. But we look forward to your questions afterwards, and over to Colleen now.
Okay. Hey, everyone. So I'm going to take us through, as Christina said, the process of how a member in good standing can become a board of director, a director on the board. So there are 4 ways within our bylaws that this process can happen. The first 3 here are really through the annual election cycle, and then the 4th is something that is seen as just a very infrequent way to be selected to become a board member through a board vote that doesn't apply every year. So I'll touch briefly on that right now, but I won't go into further detail about that. So the first 3 areas are through the nominating slate, which Christina just presented a little bit about. So that is a board selected group of people that is equal to the number of seats that is open on an annual basis. So if we had 4 seats open this year, we would have a slate of 4 candidates. If this year we had 8, because there was a cycle of the previous terms of the board directors, and then one of the current board members of the current cycle is now transitioning to the President's Council. So we have 8 seats that are available. So we created a slate of 8 candidates to fill those seats. And I will talk a little bit more about the nomination slate in a moment. The second is the petition process. The petition process is a sort of a member selected process of getting onto the ballot, so the same ballot that the nominating slate is on, and I will go through that in more detail in a moment. What I'm not going to go into more detail about currently is the write-in on the ballot. So if once we do have a full selected ballot of candidates to be selected or elected to the board, you will see that finalized ballot through the election process, but then there's an open field for anyone to write in what a candidate that they would like to see on the board. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It's currently within our bylaws. And then the seat that is vacated, we've had this instance twice in the past since we've been a merged association, where a board director in the middle of their term has decided to step down, and we are able to, as a board, propose a candidate to fill that seat, and then the board would either move on that vote or not. And so, in the past we have done that, and we also have chosen, hey, we're not going to actually fill that seat right now. So that's a board determined position. All right. So I will go through the first 2, the nominating slate and the petition process, in more detail now. I do want to give an overview of the elections timeline for 2020. We had an open call to membership to either nominate someone or nominate themselves to go through the interview process with the nominating committee. The nominating committee is a group of individuals consisting of the current President's Council, which is Christina, myself, Juan Luis, Nils, Giannis, So us 5 plus 2 past presidents. So this year we worked with Heather Perry, who was the president last year, and then Paul Stack, who was the president when we became a merged association. So the 7 of us consist of what's called the nominating committee, and this is all written within the bylaws, so you can check out if you have the time to review the bylaws and look at that the composition of that nominating committee. We go through and create a whole series of documents and follow process in order to interview people who have put themselves open for nomination. So we went through a whole interview process with a number of candidates in August. And then at the end of August, the board, who was currently not up for election this year, approved that slate of candidates for those open seats. So that's how that process works. On September 1st, this is a very important day written in our bylaws. Every year, the board of directors must deliver that slate to the membership on September 1st. And that is what we did this year. And then basically that kicks off the petition process. So if an individual does not find themselves on the slate and they went through the interview process, or a member said, you know, I didn't participate in the process, but I still would like to run for the board, then they would also go through this called petition candidacy process. They have between September 1st and September 30th to run a campaign for themselves. On September 30th, that's the closing date for the petition process according to the bylaws. In the middle of October, we will announce the final ballot. The ballot consists of the slate and any petition candidates that have received the adequate number of votes to be put on the ballot. And then in October, the SCA, the President's Council, will usually run a number of webinars interviewing each of the candidates for the membership, whether or not they're slate candidates or they're petition candidates. We treat everyone equally, and we'll do these interviews, these open webinars for the membership to understand who these candidates are so that they can vote on them in November. The elections process will go the entire month of November, and then we'll announce who actually won seats on the board in the middle of December. So we'll look at December 10th for that. That's the timeline. There's a lot, takes about half a year. So in terms of online voting in November, the board every year selects a third party to run a credible election process. So we are using for a couple of years now UK Engage for this voting. Every member who is a voting member will receive a link to the UK Engage voting platform, and you can check whether or not you are an active member and whether or not you are a voting member for your company, or if you're an individual membership, you are a voting member. You could check out your member number and your voting eligibility on the online portal, or by emailing membership@sca.coffee and understanding where you are or where your membership sits. There are other reference documents that you can look at for understanding voting. Go to sca.coffee/board/elections. If you do not have internet capability, I guess you wouldn't be on this webinar, but maybe you don't have internet capability in the voting block that is set aside, you can request a paper ballot by September 30th. Next. And I just wanted to note one more thing about being an eligible member. You had to have been an eligible member of the association by September 1st in order to vote in the next election. So before we get into the difference between slate that process and petition process, I want to give you a quick overview of the 2020 board. So we did, Christina gave a broad overview of how the board of directors is composed, and these are the actual humans that fill those seats. So we have 18 board directors, and 8 of them are moving, either cycling off and then can put themselves up for re-election, or have moved on to the President's Council. So this is our current board. And next slide. These are the 8 directors that are either cycling off, or that are cycling off. And then we have an additional one that is moving into the President's Council, Burak Alici. So Christina will be cycling off. She is not up for re-election. Nils is cycling off. He is not up for re-election. And then we have 6 other seats that are now available. The ex officio directors of the Barista Guild, Roasters Guild, and then the guest of the Coffee Tech Guild, who are technically observers into the board, but are allowed a voice, but not a vote. They will also be cycling off. And so where we are right now is we're in a position, you can move to the next slide, please, of needing to fill 8 seats. So you see the Barista Guild, the incoming chair will now have a seat on the board, as well as the incoming chair of the Roasters Guild. And we're not quite sure yet about the Coffee Technicians Guild, who's going to be the observer seat for Coffee Tech Guild. But we do have 8 seats to fill for the 2021-2022 term, so it's a 2-year term. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the slate process as written in our bylaws. As I mentioned before, we have 8 seats. The nominating committee consisting of the President's Council and 2 past presidents of the association. We went through and interviewed over 50 candidates from across the world, and I think it was representative of about 24 different countries to fill these 8 seats. What the nominating committee does when we come together in the spring, we talk about what are the current needs for the board based on our strategy, where we are financially, what is our position according to all of these metrics that we set forward for ourselves, and where do we see gaps according to the turnover on the current board of directors. Where do we see gaps in skill sets, personal demographics, and region? And so we create a matrix that is weighted based on certain characteristics. And normally the nominating committee would take it upon themselves to then assess all of the candidates according to that matrix. What we decided to do this year is a little bit of a departure from that. We decided that we would give the board of directors, we would allow them to have input into that matrix and into that weighting, so that we can be much more democratic about the process across the entire board. We don't just want to leave it up to 7 people. We want it to be more democratic for the entire board to have input and have to be empowered to sort of make decisions for the future of the board and for the future of the association ultimately. So once we received their feedback, we incorporated feedback into that matrix. We interviewed over 50 candidates and then went through a relative scoring process for each individual. At the end, normally the nominating committee would then propose to the board of directors for approval the slate of 8 candidates for those 8 seats. Something that we did differently this year to try and increase democracy on the board was that we brought more than 8 candidates to fill those 8 seats. And the board talked about a broader pool of candidates. We actually brought all of the candidates and then talked about a short list of folks who we thought could fill the skill set, could represent all of the geographies across the association that we needed to represent, and then had personal demographics of certain stakeholder groups within the association that are marginalized or that are underrepresented. So we had a broad discussion among the board of directors who were not up for re-election to increase transparency and to increase the democratic principles of the board selection. So in the end, we still need to present to the membership a balanced slate of candidates, but that's not the end of the story. So we still have a number of folks who were interviewed that are perfectly capable of serving on the board. It's just that what our role is as a board and as a nominating committee is to deliver to the membership a balanced slate of candidates for them to select from. After that, after we deliver that slate, as I previously mentioned, the petition process opens, right? So let's move forward to the next slide. Our slate of candidates that we selected this year, that the board selected this year, is Asli Yaman from Istanbul, Turkey, Pamela Chang from Singapore, Mbula Masao from Nairobi, Kenya, Vera Espindola Rafael from Mexico City, Gloria Pedrosa from Switzerland, Garfield Kerr, who lives in Dubai, Joanna Alm from Stockholm, Sweden, and Jörg Peter Schwartz from Switzerland. Hopefully, Christina, you appreciate my my attempt at German. Okay, so so for more information, you can visit the Board of Elections website at sca.coffee/board/elections and or nom.ukevote.uk/SCA. Say that 3 times. All right, so that's the slate process. And as I said, that's not where the buck stops. That is only within our bylaws what the board has to do for the membership to create a balanced pool of candidates to vote on to fill those 8 seats. Obviously, we are an association of thousands of members across the world, across more than 24 countries. So we do have an equal weighting in terms of the value that we place on candidates through a petition process. It is an equally valid and very important process that we have included in our bylaws to allow other members to get on the ballot. So here's how that petition process works. So members who were not selected for the slate, or members who weren't even part of the interview process, have the right to seek nomination by petition. So, petition can be a very loaded word. In my opinion, this is a very, very important way for members to also get on the ballot. It allows them to expand their networks. It allows them to draw on their networks. And it, allows for outside selection from beyond the board of directors ourselves. So I wouldn't call this, petition is a loaded word. It's not a protest process. It is a petition process. What that means is you have to get a minimum of 100 signatures from eligible voting members in the SCA, or 1% of the entire membership, whichever is less, I think. So, right now, based on our current global membership, each petition candidate needs 100 signatures in order to be put on the ballot for November. Every year we have petition candidates. Every year a petition candidate gets on the ballot and gets elected to the board. Ever since we've started elections as a merged association, it is a very important process for everyone that is a member to understand that they have the right to do. So what happens once we deliver the slate, we open up the petition process that started September 1st. The member would notify the SCA of the intention to become a petition candidate via the form that is listed here, and I'm not going to read all those letters and numbers. And you use the SCA election website to collect 100 signatures from eligible voting members. So those signatures, as I said, are only valid from SCA members that are in good standing. And that means that they are members, fully paid members by September 1st, 2020. Petition candidates, let's see, are updated on their process I think every week, every Friday, and they are notified once they receive a minimum of 100 signatures from eligible voting members. Once they have that, then they're put on the ballot for November. So, and during that time, during the October interview process and webinar process with the membership on all of the folks on the ballot, you know, they're announced with the SCA elections website. They're announced through other channels as well. Like I said, you know, every year we have petition candidates get onto the ballot and then get elected to the board. We treat them no differently. They are eligible members in our eyes, and we think that this is a very important process for members to be fully aware of. And that is that. Can we just go back one more time before we jump into Q&A? Can you just jump back to the timeline, please? Please.
Definitely. Let me find it. In the meantime, we do have a question as I skip back to it. Question number 1, in the past, the nominating committee was made up of both board members and representatives from the regular membership. We are regular members not included in the nominating committee any longer, ? And that is from Spencer. So that's up for, I believe, you, Giannis?
So thank you, Leanne. So Spencer, I think what Spencer is referring is the previous process that was followed by SCA-A. Actually, on SCA-E, we didn't even have a slate. It was open elections. When we did merge on the bylaws, we described very specifically how the nominating committee is formed and what are the members of the nominating committee. And those bylaws were put also in front of the members to vote on them. So the process is that the nominating committee is formed by the current President's Council, as Christina and Colleen presented earlier on, plus 2 directors emeritus, and it's very clearly described on our bylaws. So it's not a continuation of the bylaws of the Heritage SCA-A, I would say. Those are the new bylaws that were put in front of members to vote. And I hope that answered your question, Spencer.
Great, thank you, Giannis. As we wait for more questions to come in, I'd like to thank Christina, Colleen, and Giannis for being here today. To just clarify this whole process, I think everyone appreciates it. And Colleen, here's the timeline that you wanted.
Yeah, so I just wanted to leave it up for folks just to be aware of. I know that there's a lot of dates in here, but I think the important ones moving forward are where we are in the petition process. We have 12 days left. I know there are a number of folks who have reached out to me personally that are interested in becoming petition candidates. So I think it's a really important timeline to just make people aware of that. We don't have much time left if you want to put your name forward to be on the ballot.
Great, and this just in, comment from Spencer in response to you, Giannis. The communication regarding candidates on the SCA website, including a short bio with their professional qualifications. We would all benefit from a personal statement from each candidate explaining why they are seeking the position, what they hope to accomplish, and what in their background has prepared them for this global strategic position. For incumbent candidates, we would benefit from knowing what accomplishments and success they have had on the board that should be considered for their re-election.
Yes, that is a good point, Spencer. Usually after October 1st, when we have the full ballot there, we organize webinars so that all the members can meet the candidates, and we give the chances for both people that were put into the ballot through the slate or through petitions to have the chance to present their, I would say, position, what they have accomplished and what they want to accomplish by coming into the board. So we will organize, as always, webinars for the members to meet the candidates. after October 1st.
Great. So there are no more questions at this time. I think this would be a great opportunity to, do you have a summary, Christina, Colleen, that you might want to highlight important parts out of this presentation?
Sure. So I might start, and then Colleen, whatever you want to add. I would like to say that Colleen and I have very consciously this year tried to make it a more transparent and more inclusive process. And Colleen continues to drive that process too. So as I said, the nominating committee actually interviewed, I think, 62.
I think we lost Christina.
I think so too.
Can
Colleen,
you
do
hear
you?
me now?
Oh, yes, we do.
Yes.
I don't think we could hear you now. No. Colleen, did you want to pick up where Christina left off?
And we've really tried to make it a more transparent way in. We really took the effort to interview all 62 different candidates for the slate. Unfortunately, we only have eight seats available. That's why we could only select 8. But we really had very good candidates also. And we're very happy and proud that we have so many different good candidates from the industry. And we would really like to, encourage you. If it's not this year, next year is another opportunity. We really hope and need you to also come back and be interested in becoming a board member. It's an important process that we actually drive in the best people from the whole specialty coffee community and industry. And we're really happy to have so many that applied, and we encourage you to petition if you weren't elected on the slate, and continue to become very closely linked to the association, because the association can only be successful if we have great people like we had this year really apply for the board position and become part of that community and part of that specialty coffee community. That's what I would like to say. Colleen, would you like to add something to that? You're on mute. I can't actually hear you. Maybe other
Oh, there we
people
go.
can.
Okay.
Now we can.
Yeah, so I think the only thing that I would add is that it's an evolving process for the nominating committee and the board selection and the slate and everything, and that's really why we believe so much in the petition process as well. But we have bylaws that we adhere to, and then beyond that is just we create and pressure test and do all of the discussion with the board on the process for continuing to improve the selection process, whether that's the board selected seats on the President's Council or the board selected slate for the membership. We're in constant evolution, but I think that in terms of the result of a balanced slate for membership, we're there. And we have been there for the past 2 elections, and then where we go and from the future is really up to the membership. So that's it.
Great. Giannis, do you have any closing words?
God, I'd also like to just also add, if you don't have questions now, they might come up. Please feel free to reach out to us, Yanis, the association, to either Colleen and myself. Whatever contact form you fill out, you will get to us. If there's any more questions, any more uncertainty, that's one of the reasons we wanted to do the webinar today. We want it to be a very transparent, very open process while adhering to the bylaws. But if there are any questions or any suggestions or anything you'd like to share with us, then please do. That's the point of doing webinars and also being, in close contact with the open communication to the community. So if there's anything that comes up, please share and come back to us. So over to you, Yanis.
So thank you both so much, Colleen and Christina. For me, I think elections is it's a very important process for moving the organization forward. And this year we are actually have an opening for 8 seats. Those are the most seats we ever had. And we have a board of 18 people, and having new people every time coming in, it's important to get the association moving and to be able to hear what the members are also looking for. So thank you all so much for attending this webinar. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great. Thanks,
Leanne, and thank you, Vicente, also for the great organization of this webinar. It wouldn't be possible if you didn't, plan it so well and structure it so well. So thank you very much.
Thanks. And if anyone needs to find out more information, including a contact form on our election portal, it's at sca.coffee/board/elections. Thanks.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.